All right, here is my Razer desktop build. I built this desktop myself, and I bought all of the components with my own money. This is not a paid video, nor is it sponsored in any way. I like Razer products, so I bought it and built it. Not only that, I didn't just build it for a video. This is literally my daily driver that I've been using every day for the past months since I built it. So let's check out the build process. Today, we're gonna build a desktop. Not just any desktop, an all Razer desktop, or like 95% Razer desktop. So these are all the pieces I purchased. I took the time to pick them all out individually. Everything that was Razer made, I was purchasing. Razer doesn't make, obviously, a processor or SSD or a GPU or RAM, but everything else is Razer. We have the Razer Tomahawk ATX gaming chassis. Inside there, we're gonna go with the ASRock Z690 Taichi Razer Edition motherboard. We're gonna power it with the i7 13700KF. I was a little worried about thermals in there, so I thought the i7 was better than the i9, and of course I saved a little bit of dough because everything else is not cheap. To cool the i7, we're going to use the Razer Hanbo 240. I got the 240 instead of the 360. That box is backwards because Razer shipped it in that box with the sticker on the box, which I don't love. So that will be cooling the CPU. The GPU will be the ZOTAC GeForce RTX 3080 Ti. This is the one thing that I had already before buying the rest of the stuff, so I figured why not repurpose it. 3080 Ti is still plenty powerful, and I wasn't positive how well the Tomahawk would work with cooling one of those big boys like the 4090. Speaking of power, we have the Razer Katana Chroma 1200W 80 plus platinum power supply. And then we have not one, not two, not three, but four of the Razer Kunai Chroma fans, 120 millimeters. So 3 that I'm gonna put up front, and then 1 is the exhaust. The Tomahawk comes with a fan already, but it does not have Chroma RGB. And what's the point of building an all Razer desktop if you're not going to have as much Chroma RGB as possible? And then I don't know if I need these other two or not. I was not clear, so hopefully I can determine that on my path. But the Razer PWM PC fan controller and the Razer Chroma addressable RGB controller. The PWM controller, of course, will control the fans, and the addressable RGB controller will control the RGB. So seeing as they're all Razer products, I would hope I could control all the RGB without that addressable controller. And since I bought all Razer fans, I thought maybe I wouldn't need the PWM as well, but I didn't want to get partially built and then not have those, so I went ahead and picked them up. They weren't that expensive compared to the rest of the items there. So for the other non-Razer products, I went with the Samsung 990 Pro, which will be my main C drive. My secondary drive is going to be the WD Black SN850X. Both of those will be 2 terabytes, and there's actually a third slot in the motherboard that I'm going to put a Gen 3 in that will also be 2 terabytes. Samsung 970. I don't have that up there because it's not that impressive. I didn't get great results when I put the SN850X in my laptop, but I'm hoping that was just a fluke. And then I really debated about what kind of RAM to get. I ended up getting the Kingston Fury 216GB6, so 32 gigabyte total, DDR5 6000. They have RGB. It doesn't say Razer Chroma here, but I was hoping that it does say ASRock, which is what this is. I'm hoping it will work, and we'll determine that as part of our build process. So there she is, a lot of money laid out, and now let's get to building. Again, I should clarify, never built a PC before. So we'll see how it goes.
I can't fuck this up.
All right, now we're gonna install my Intel Core i7 13700KF LGA 1700 into the ASRock Z690 Taichi Razer Edition motherboard, also an LGA 1700. Was that like land grid array or something? I watched the Linus Tech Tips video on how to do this. So this is honestly one of the most nerve-wracking parts of this because I got big hands. I'm a big, strong guy. It's the easiest way to break little delicate pieces that will really, 2 of the most expensive pieces of the whole build are right here. So essentially you want to pull this guy out and it pops up, and that should spring this little guy up. All right, so just look in there to see if we see any bend pins. Also does not appear to be a little dot on the side. Oh, maybe this one has it. Yeah, there's a little arrow on the black piece here. That's how you're supposed to double check to know that you're installing this correctly. So this here is one of the most concerning parts, of course. All right, so you don't want to touch, the shiny parts on the bottom. You want to touch the side as gently as possible. And you want to lay it in. There's two little nubs there. Give it a little wiggle just to make sure it doesn't flop around. And I don't think it does. I think it's in there pretty good. So now we lay this down. I didn't do that quite right. I was supposed to catch that there, but I couldn't really see it. So either way, you want to keep this. I'm going to keep this with my motherboard kit. Just both of these I'm going to keep in case there's a problem. And I'll wipe my fingerprint off the top of there before I put the smudge in. So hopefully it's in there. Do a better job than I did. You don't deserve it. You do better. All right, so here we are carrying on with our build. And now we're going to install this Kingston Fury DDR5 RAM into my Taichi Z690 ASRock motherboard. I actually looked on both the motherboard and here a website to make sure that they're compatible. For the most part, I think if they'll fit, they'll probably work, but wanted to be sure about things. So I double checked, and you can double check in your motherboard. So like I showed, you know, different motherboards will be different, but on this one, it does show here which two it should go in, which is the 2 and 4, which is fairly standard for a 4-slot system, but you always want to double check. It's not super clear in the manual for the motherboard, but it does essentially show you, like it shows the populated only in one section. But all right, so DDR5 RAM, there's a little slot in the middle there, so we'll line that up. You'll have to pop these out on both sides, and then we're just gonna push it down. Push it real good. Now let's see how it lines up. Fury goes towards top, that makes sense. Sticker label towards the CPU, slot them in both sides, and there's a little indent in the middle. And then essentially you should just push down, it should pop in. All right, and then same thing, right? So you're gonna do slot 4 here. Make sure I get a better angle for me and less worry about my friends, the viewers here. Did not go in great. RAM is something I've changed on multiple devices, so I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the Fury or the motherboard, but I mean, they're in there and hopefully they work. We'll see when we boot it up, but not the ka-chunk like you want to hear. So, all right, so now we're gonna install our Samsung 990 Pro PCIe 4.0 NVMe M.2 SSD, 2 terabyte into the ASRock Z690 Taichi board, part of my Razer desktop build. And you know, various motherboards will be different. This one has a heatsink built into it. They do sell the 990 Pro with the heatsink pre-attached, but I knew I was getting it for this motherboard. This is here is the heatsink. It does have this little sticky tape here, so make sure we'll peel this off so we'll get the goodness on there. I do need a screw. There is, that did come in the motherboard box, came with it. I don't recall. I guess the Samsung did not come with it. So it came with 3 separate of these in my motherboard box. So let's go ahead. Again, this is my first time building a desktop computer. I have upgraded the SSDs in multiple desktop computers, and I've added SSDs to laptops. So this is probably the most comfortable I am with anything of this build. So, you know, this motherboard has 3 M.2 slots, and this one is M.2_1, which I assume is the priority one. All right, and so I do have 3 SSDs to install. I'm gonna install Windows on this. It's a new build, of course, and it will get a little wonky sometimes if you have multiple drives installed. So I'm gonna install this one drive, set the computer fully up, install Windows, and then I'll take it back apart and add the other 2 drives, which is gonna be a huge pain on this one because of the GPU is right on top of this guy. I'm gonna make it work. So again, there's a little slot here that lines up there. I think it's fine to leave that little mush in there. We'll see. That slots right in. Yeah, I mean, that's just a perfect fit there. We got our screw. Screw it. Looking good. And this hole goes towards this side for this particular motherboard. These screws don't come out, which is very nice. And then again, we're gonna peel this off. And that's just some thermal tape, essentially, to help with the cooling process. All right, got them on there. You know, this is a scenario where having large hands is kind of a disadvantage, right? I'm a large guy. My buddy Tony is a great guy, but physically small person. I'm 6'1", 250, 240, really, on diet. He's probably, I don't know, 5'8", but he has very small hands. Take my hand!
No, give me your other hand!
Oh, my other hand isn't strong enough. You take my little hand.
No, get it away from me!
Take it!
So he's always talking about building the computers. So it's probably easier for him, but like I have a hard time, especially when this is gonna be in the case, I'm gonna have a hard time. But probably if you have smaller hands, it's probably a lot easier. All right, so there's our SSD installed. So now we're going to install the brackets for the AIO onto the motherboard itself. Again, I have the Razer Hanbo 240mm. Interesting enough, you know, it comes with all the parts in the bag, but the Razer documentation, the paper in the box and the digital one online, is not very clear. It says to use LGA 115X, you know, or 1366, or LGA 2000, or AMD, but I have LGA 1700. Now, in the bag, they have one clearly labeled. This was in the Razer box, clearly labeled LGA 1700, or Intel 1700, which I appreciate because I didn't know which which one to use. And I was getting frustrated that I was gonna have to stop my build in the middle of it, which I didn't want to do. And even the motherboard documentation is not great for this part. Some of the motherboard documentation is really good, and then some of it is not. Like, it literally just shows a CPU cooler going on. Doesn't really talk too much about AIO. I figured it out. I watched a bunch of videos, of course. There's not a lot of videos on the particular product, which is why I'm making this course. So we have this guy goes in the back. This guy's also in the case. And I was confused from the Razer documentation, which is not great, but the Razer Intel version is already attached to the cooler itself. So all we need to do is put this guy on with these LGA 1700 screws. And again, they're just hand tightenable essentially. So let's take our motherboard up. This should fit right in the holes there. I'm just gonna stand it up while I put a couple in to keep them in place. So, you know, it has to pop through the holes there. So I'm essentially just gonna hold it up, I guess. Let me just tighten this one up first. We'll do this one here on the bottom. We'll see. Doesn't seem to fit great. Still seems a little loosey-goosey in there, right? That doesn't seem right. I've never done this before, so maybe you need a little extra space. Who knows? I mean, they tighten up, but there's still space there. So, all right. So now we got that in. I'm not going to attach the other piece until I get into the, you know, having to maneuver the radiator. Seems like a huge pain. So I'm not going to do that until I mount it into the case itself. I'm going to start putting the motherboard into the case, but I'm gonna replace this fan anyhow, so I'm gonna take this fan out and then I move this back plate to make it easier to reach stuff for the motherboard, of course. But I'm gonna take this fan out, just give myself a little more room. The fan that was in there that I just took out doesn't even have the Razer logo on it, right? No RGB, just a really cheap fan. So for the complaints of this case being overpriced, this is probably my biggest complaint. There's no reason they couldn't slap in one of their Kunai fans in there, right? All right, now for the motherboard, the standoffs in Razer Tomahawk case were already installed and they basically all line up. There's only one missing really, but there's no extra standout. So I mean, I just kind of eyeballed them. I haven't actually put it in there yet, but just kind of eyeballing it, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of space there, so I'm not looking forward to this step. It's really not a lot of room to work with. Well, I mean, about as good as we expected, I think. There we go. All right, and then Razer comes with the screws, and it does tell you in the manual which ones are for this. So like I said, we're only missing one standoff essentially, so should be all right. I mean, you definitely want to do this when it's laying flat down, right? You don't want to, and you want a magnetic screwdriver as this is. I'm not gonna go too hardcore on any of these screws. I don't want to damage anything. This screw hole here is about the only one that doesn't have a standoff for it. Everything else, I believe, lines up correctly. And this is the only pack in the Razer case with a lot of screws, so it's pretty easy to know which one's which. And again, I'm using this little iFixit kit. I highly recommend this. I've used it on multiple PC projects and it always works pretty great. All right, so I got them all bolted in. Again, there wasn't a standoff here, and for some reason this top guy is wonky. It doesn't want to go in all the way there. I've taken it out multiple times, put it back in. I tried different screws. Like this one also was wonky, and then I took the screw out and put a different one in, it worked fine. And the rest of them all seem to be perfectly good, even that hard to get one inside the hole there. But that top guy just won't seem to fully mash down. I don't know why, but it does not seem to be, you know, it seems to be perfectly in here there. So I don't know, I don't see any issue even on the back side. You can't really see where it pins down at, but I mean, I didn't notice any issues. So 2 quick notes. One, there was a little blue tag hanging up there. I thought I messed up pretty bad. I mean, not really pretty bad, but it'd be passable no matter what. But there was a plastic little film guy here, but I can still use this little pulley guy from the, this little blue guy was poking up top. I didn't know what that was, but I probably should have peeled this part off before I put it in there. But I don't know, it worked fine. So now I probably should have waited, but either way, it's in there, it's off, it's fine. Crisis averted. Another item, like I said, this is my first build, so I'm following along with Linus Tech Tips. And he said, before you actually mount the motherboard, to install these 8 pins up here. I can still get it done, but I'm using all Razer components. Of course, the Razer Katana came with 2 separate ones. The motherboard has 2 ports. They're both 8-pin, and both of them, they do say CPU on them, which is pretty nice. I guess I'm gonna use the CPU part. I'm gonna have the CPU cord going out the back, so I'll know which one's plugged in here. So basically, I'm just gonna put one through back here. Yeah, I'll have the CPU part down the bottom, so I know which one to plug into the power supply. I'm gonna come through this side over here, and then we'll have less bend on our cable, I think. All right, and we're gonna do the other one. I'm gonna do the same thing. I might regret this later, but for now, I think it's a pretty good idea. All right, the next step would be plug in all these wires from the Razer case. So these are the 2 that I ran to the motherboard already. We'll plug those into the power supply shortly. So you can see that there's this cord going from this LED aRGB header, essentially, that controls the LEDs on the bottom and the Razer logo on the front. So I need to plug in all of these guys from the back of here to the motherboard. And then, you know, they come nice and neatly down this channel here. So I really don't want to undo all this because you can still leave this nice and neat. I might tighten it up some more later, but for now, we're gonna try to keep it as neat as possible. I'm not a cable management superstar. I'm gonna leave this one open because I might do some of it later. So the motherboard ends right here. So let's start off. Obviously, one of the most important things we need to do is plug in. There's the reset button and the power switch. They should both be right next to each other on the motherboard. So I'm gonna poke them through this little hole right here. This is the worst part. I need a lazy Susan to build this. So these come out and they're gonna plug in down this bottom area here. You want these guys there. It does say on the motherboard, but I'm gonna double check the user guide because it's so small on there. There is a PDF of all these on the website itself. So in that bottom right corner, next to the power button, the top guys are for speaker. So line 20 is power LED and speaker header. Well, the good news is it doesn't clarify if this is a positive or negative. It just says power switch. So not great. Razer. I don't think the Razer documentation says it either. See, it just says black, white, negative, and black. There's no color. It's all one color. It's all black.
Actual fact, you need to be black.
What the hell is the matter with you? There's an arrow on the top, so I'm just gonna hope that the arrow is positive, I guess. All right, so the one by itself at the end here is supposed to be just a ground and then the reset button and then the power button there. I'm just gonna assume the words go this way. All right, so put the power on this side and we'll do reset button on this side. And we're just gonna hope that works. So the motherboard's not bad. I blame the Razer case for this one because it's not labeled well at all. All right, my light went out over here, but I just double checked. Razer's guide, I guess, is stupid. I watched Linus's video again and they're saying it does not matter which polarity they are, so probably fine like that. And then of course we're gonna tuck our wires back in here and we'll get our next wire ready. So the next cable to get is this HD audio cable. That should control, you know, obviously the audio, the microphone, and the jack on the case itself. Now this one has a blacked out pin right here, so it can only go, this is the HD audio part here. I actually may not need to go through here. I might be able to come through this bottom part. Let me try that. And so the blacked out part is on the bottom left. Basically the HD audio words pointing down. And there you can see, and we plugged that in there. All right, so another complaint with Razer documentation. So this cable here, on this guide, it calls it USB 3.2 Gen 1, which is what it is, right? But this is what came with it. The paper version. On their website, on Razer.com, they have an installation guide as well. You know, not the paper one. I was looking at the digital one, and I guess it's older because it calls it USB 3.0. So I was looking on my motherboard for a USB 3.0 port at the motherboard documentation, but it doesn't have that, right? It just has either 2.0 or 3.1. So right below the ATX Power 1, number 10 here, is a USB 3.2 Gen 1 header. USB 3.2 Gen 1 is right here, which is what this cable is. And then also right here, slightly lower, number 14 on the guide here, is another USB 3.2 Gen 1 header. And based on its placement and how thick this cable is, I'm gonna use this one. And this does have one side with a little nub on it, which is oddly enough the side that I don't have a lot of room with here. This is a very stiff cable. That's what I was afraid was gonna happen. All right, we have our first potential casualty. I pulled that off and put it right back on, so hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I'm gonna be very unhappy. If I didn't tear that up too bad, the next item on the agenda is the USB-C cable, which only goes in one spot.
In the compact spot! 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 Spot!
It should be right there. All right, so that went in, you know, perfectly fine, no problem. And this one, I think it's probably still fine. Who knows?
That's okay!
All right, so now I'm gonna install this back Razer fan. So again, I removed the junky one that was in there, and I'm gonna put the Kunai fan in here. And the one that was in there, the wires are going this way, which makes sense anyhow. The Razer documentation here, again, is a fail. On the website, in the FAQs, it tells you which way the air goes, but it does not tell you in the documentation or the box or on the fan itself, at least not that I can see. Maybe you're supposed to know which way they go, but air is going towards the Snake. So the Snake logo, I want this to be exhaust, so the Snake logo needs to face the inside, which is gonna look better anyhow, but it'd be nice if they actually told you that. Another weirdness is that I was just gonna reuse the screws I took out of the case, but the ones that come with the Kunai fans are not the same as the ones I took out of the existing case. So that's more fun stuff from Razer. But it should line up pretty swell right here. I'm just gonna ever so gently hand tighten them. Well, I'm still using a screwdriver, but my point is they're not gonna be tight. They're just kind of holding it in there until I know exactly how I want it. You could use these rubber screw things, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to use the regular metal one. I don't think it's going to be too loud. I'm not too worried about the overall volume. I mean, if it gets crazy, I mean, I'm not going to throw these away essentially, but there you can see how they screw on here. And essentially now I just need to get it about up. And I took a very precise measurement and I noticed it was about finger depth here. So I'll put it right about there. So just shy of the top of it. And I did it wrong. What a fucking idiot. I clearly said I wanted the screws on that side. Always pay attention to what you're doing. I don't know how I managed to do that.
Idiot.
So now my fan is installed and the wires are where I want them. I am going to, I mean, you could plug it in my motherboard, but I have the PWM fan controller. So I'm going to shoot them out the back and hopefully not have to plug all this stuff into the motherboard directly and use those little Razer controllers. So I'm gonna shoot these out this back hole right here, put the rubber band back on them and hope that this all works out. All right, we have our single Kunai fan in here. Now we're gonna put 3 fans in the front here. So we're gonna pull this guy off. There's a handle right at the bottom that you can pull on, pop it out. Set it aside somewhere where these heathens in my house won't tear it up. All right, so now we have the open front panel. This will be the only one I have room to work in properly, I think. All right, so now we have our triple fan pack. So we have 3 sets of fans here. These are kind of gnarly looking, like, I don't know what happened. I'm gonna try to clean it. They came out of the box like that. It was weird because the other one didn't, and these are potentially newer. So let me hit them with a little spit shine right quick.
Gotta give him that huck to it. Spit on that thing.
Doesn't matter because you're not gonna see this side. So I mentioned this on the other fan install, but Razer's documentation is awful. Now there is an FAQ on their website and it tells you, I mean, maybe you're supposed to know how the fins work, but I don't. So basically air comes in through the Snake. So I want the front to be an intake, this to be an exhaust, and the top to be an exhaust. And obviously air coming up this way. I am gonna mount these over here. I'm not gonna use those rubber screws. I mean, I will if I have to, I guess, if I lose one or something, or if it gets super noisy at some point, but I think I'm gonna be okay without it. Let me see, I don't know how I'm gonna fit 3 in here. So there's 1 there, 2 here. Oh yeah, so I'll have to take that piece out. So yeah, so to get your fans in, you gotta take this little piece right here out, which is fine. There's just a little screw right here, and then it pops right out. All right, so the fan is gonna be right up against, I'm taking this out maybe. It'll fit, yeah, be a bit snug maybe, but all right, so now it slides right in there. I don't think you can get 4 fans in there, but you definitely get 3. Yeah, all right. I could have probably fit 3 of the larger models. They sell both the 120 and what, 240? I think I definitely could have fit 3 140s in here. I was afraid you couldn't because their documentation wasn't clear. But yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of room to fit unless it smushes up on this guy down here. But I feel like I mean, it's too late now. I'm not buying it again. So let me just set this guy here quite precariously. And then I'm gonna basically just lightly screw them in. This is the easiest part of this build so far. I mean, it does seem that since Razer makes this desktop, this is the only desktop they make when they make the smaller one, and they make these fans. So, I mean, I guess they want it not to be proprietary, but it seems like they would just make it sort of proprietary so everything can fit nice and perfectly. But I guess they didn't want to do that. So I'm gonna leave all those loose for now. And I can decide exactly how I want to put them in. Yeah, man, I guess these slots here, outside slots would hit the 140, so yeah, you could fit 3 140s in the front. Other than regretting just building a computer in general at this point, if I had a regret, it would be probably not getting 3 140s here, because I bought the 120 separately. Now the 120 seems pretty good in the back, and I just assumed they should all match. There's probably really no reason for that, but it just seemed like something I wanted to happen, so that's what I did. But I would say, I guess I'll have to wait till I'm done building it, but I could have either fit a 360 radiator down the front here. No, I still don't know if I could. I didn't know how much it would hit the GPU. PC-centric seems to think that you should have a radiator on top. So now I gotta figure out what to do with the wiring. Now, it does say on their documentation that you can daisy chain them, which is what I'm probably gonna do. So I'm taking this one out first, and this one. So yeah, the top one's coming out, middle guy coming out. I'm gonna band you up in just a second. All right, so this is coming together okay-ish. There we go. All right, so there's our fans. Looking pretty good so far. Here's another example of Razer documentation sucking. So there's no mention of this USB guy, which is coming from basically the aRGB controller, I think, on the back of the pin. It says USB on it. It will fit this USB down here, it can fit this guy right here, but that's where the other USB port's supposed to go. So I'm gonna have to, I think, get a USB splitter maybe, but for now, just so my lights will work, I think I will plug it in here because it has a missing hole right here. So, and I don't think there's another USB 2.0 header, which is a shame because I wanted to put that extra USB port there. So I'll probably have to buy a USB splitter for that to work. But that wasn't covered in Razer's documentation when I was pre-planning this. It's not on here, and it's not on the install guide. So that sucks. So I'm already at a weird crossroad here because Razer's documentation is what I'm blaming this on, right? So there is like a little tray here. I saw a picture on their website and it does show where the fans are basically inside here. It's not clear. I saw videos from PC Tech and Robitech and Tech Block, and they all had them different. So I don't see any reason why I can't have them like this. There's plenty of room. I checked my 3080 Ti, it fits in here as well. You can undo this screw here on the case, and then this whole piece comes out, and then you can adjust it. But that documentation is terrible on Razer's website. It's not on the main book that comes with this, and nowhere does it really clarify on the Kunai page or the, you know, what is the preferred method. And like if you mount this back on there, here's where the ventilation is, right? If I have them where I have them now, you have all this space to get air and that little channel there, but I don't know if it's getting better airflow if you have the fans closer to these holes or further away from these holes. So I feel like if I have them in here where I have them now, the lights are gonna look better inside of here. But there are seemingly holes here that's meant to kind of cable manage it, so I don't know.
Who designed these things, man?
If I move the fans on the inside here, I can put that little panel back. But if the panel's back, this is gonna basically cut off my airflow, right? Like this, it seems like I could still get some airflow. I don't know how airflow works.
You motherfucker, you are not taking me to school.
But assuming, hey, maybe you're supposed to have the fan blowing on the drives, essentially, but you know, it just seems like an odd setup here. Really, I probably should have just put two 140s up here and not do the 3 fans. That would have probably made more sense, because 140s only go one way, and that would have solved this whole dilemma I have. But I thought I'd be better off with 3 120s instead of 2 140s, but now it's confusing about how they're supposed to actually fit.
Who designed these things, man?
So I decided to take the fans back out. More so because, so the 3080 will fit with the fans back here like that, but I figure I want to put this little piece back in here. Like I assume it's supposed to be there. If I ever bumped it up from a 3080 to 4090 or something like that, it's going to be larger, and I didn't know if it's going to hit. And plus there's these holes here for cable management, which I assume these are for cable management, so I assume that's going to make it easier and cleaner than all the wires chunked up in here. So there is a screw hole right here, and there is on the other side as well. Again, this is very poorly laid out in the user manual. These screws seems to be in the middle of the 3 holes. But those 2 screws out, I think it just pops right out, and then it can come out of here. I don't know what. Oh shit. Oh my goodness. See, I should have never taken that out. There's a little bit gap here. So there's 2 holes. There's a hole here and here. And it says you can go to either one of these. I guess it goes back a little deeper maybe. So it does give you more room to work with. Oh shit. And I already tore this thing up.
Bitch, is you down?
Alright, so it goes in like this. Then yeah, we have our slots here that I believe is where the fan should be held. So when you take this guy out, it is easier to mess with it now, but it's going to be harder to fully solidify it because you can't really screw it in back there. You kind of gotta know where it is and tighten it directly down, but I guess you're supposed to just know that.
Bitch, is you down?
It's obviously gonna look better this way, but this way it's gonna be covered up, so it doesn't make any sense. So I redid it. I mean, it's definitely gonna look better on the outside, but that doesn't really make any sense. You can go to 2 different slots here, this one or this one. I'm gonna try the bottom one. Let's just see how that works. Let me try the one that's a little bit higher up. So you got a little bit of finger clearance here. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I mean, it goes the same spot both times. I don't know what the difference is. I guess it goes a little further back. Yeah, I think I'd want it more forward, right? All right, so now let me lean it back out and stick this guy back here. I should be able to dump it across the top here. And then this guy, I should go right through this hole here. All right, so that works pretty well for those. And that will help the overall cable management. And then just for being pretty, if I take the cover off, it's gonna look prettier here, I guess, this way. But inside, I don't know if it's gonna look as good. I think it looked better my original way inside, right? I didn't turn them on yet, so. But I mean, these do seem like these are holes are meant for cable management, so it does seem like this is probably the way to go. So yeah, now we got these cables out of the way, tie them up in a second. So I mean, it does look pretty clean inside there, so maybe that is the better way to do it. Now that I moved those fans, I can put this guy back where he initially was. I don't know if that helps with airflow, hurts airflow, or if I need to set something there, but either way, I'm gonna lose it if I don't put it back where it goes. It definitely looks cleaner like this. So there is a USB port on this guy, and it has the Intel version already attached. This little ring for the Intel one's already attached, and obviously the GU, professional name GU, is already attached. And there are holes in here to screw into both sides, right? So I am gonna put this up top, and then you can screw into the top from here as well. So this shouldn't be a terrible installation, actually. I was kind of worried about this. I thought this would be the worst, but I don't think it'll be terrible. Interesting side note, Razer's own manual has this shown, like, you know, all the YouTubers had a big war a while back about which way this should go, and everyone kind of agrees these shouldn't be on the bottom. And in Razer's documentation, it has it like that. But on their video Razer support website, it says don't do that. So either way, I'm gonna have it up top, so it won't make a difference. All right, I almost forgot. I got to install this fan on the motherboard. The documentation said to not do this until it was mounted, but I feel like I could have easily done this when it wasn't in the case. Just do it on the motherboard. Seems like it'd even make more sense to do it that way, but what are you gonna do? There's directions for installing the 3010 or the 4010. I guess I don't have this one. I just have this little guy,
Oh,
so
no.
I don't know that. Yeah, that's weird. There's nothing in this documentation that calls it a 3010 or a 4010, but I can just tell from the size. I mean, it's definitely a 3010, right? It's a smaller guy. So it's going, you know, right there. There we go. I got one of them in. See a little 2 screws there on that fan guy, so I got to kind of straighten it out a little bit. Let me move you out of the way. And then this guy goes onto the VRM fan header, which would be VRM fan 1, which is the first slot. So the closest one. There's like a little bit of a bracket on there. All right, so now we're going to put 2 fans on the radiator and then put the radiator up top there. So this one, putting the fans on the radiator, should be the easy one to do. So it does come with the regular Razer Kunai fans, but it has different screws, and they are relatively self-contained. I don't know which one's which. It's hard to say. It's gonna have to be these long guys here, I guess. And they are like a hex bolt. And there is an Allen wrench, but I'm not gonna use that. I have my iFixit kit. Perfect. So we're gonna exhaust air out the top, and the airflow from the Razer fans, there's no labels here, but the Snekes suck air in. So air's going this way. The Razer logo will be facing the inside parts. And I'm gonna put this guy over here, so I need to make sure my wiring is on the right side. All right, so that screws in perfectly there. So this is like the first Razer thing that seems to like have some real thought about how all the pieces should connect correctly. So if I take this other one, I should line it up, Snekes on the back, and then we want it going out this hole. So I really don't understand why Razer just doesn't sell a pre-built desktop. I would have gladly. I mean, Main Gear makes one, but I mean, it's just using Razer parts, but it was pretty pricey. But it seems like, especially if Razer's making all this stuff, they could just sell one. As I've mentioned a few times, this is my first ever desktop build. I am not enjoying it. I mean, it's not bad, I guess, but this isn't fun to me. And as part of my build research, I was watching Linus Tech Tips video on building, and they complained about, you know, putting the fans in the radiator being one of the biggest pains, and that's one of the few Razer strong points at this point, right? That's this design. Sits pretty well. So this guy, you can see, just slides off, magnetic.
Fucking magnets, how do they work?
So now, which screws to mount that on the top? Hopefully it's not, I mean, it's definitely gonna be these little shitty ones, right? Smaller, harder to deal with ones. This, I think, is probably gonna be the most challenging part. Trying to get this guy in here, get our cables ran. I guess the real question though is, where do I wanna put it? I would like to not do that, but I'm gonna have to take these off and run them through the holes first, and then I have to hold it all up ready. So I better get a screw ready. I better get 2 screws ready. There's a lot of holes up there. This desk that I record on is an electric desk, a standing desk. I don't know why I didn't do this earlier, but definitely lower you down some. All right, got a screw with the washer on it, ready to go. I could use a helper at this stage probably. I think it'll be all right, but so. Let me go ahead and get these guys out of here. Maybe a bit of hubris, but I have a good feeling about how my cable management's gonna go.
Vaginal hubris, vaginal hubris.
All right, I got a screw ready to go. And then I'm gonna try to hold this up. All right, now there's a lot of holes here, so it's hard to determine where the best one is, but I guess it kind of has to be there. All right, there we go. So you can see there's a bunch of holes here. It seems to only fit on this side, so that seems to only do there. So maybe if you had a larger one, it would go here, but I don't know what these are for. But I don't think you can go back that far with my motherboard, maybe a different motherboard, but to these. So it seems like these are the only options, or at least here. So this seems to only go this way. Let's get hit the GPU then. All the images show it going this way, but then it's really hovering over my cards. All right, I guess that's the way to do it. That's how I'll do it then. Let me go ahead and just tighten them down. There's enough screws for all the holes, so I will fill her up.
Fill her up, please.
All right, well, all those on. Let's make sure this guy still fits properly. I mean, it definitely humps up here. It's very odd. I thought that'd be a problem. Now, if they were in the middle, it wouldn't cause a problem, but there's no screw holes in the middle. This thing's just gonna sit kind of stupidly up here, I guess. This little hole here, but I guess no one's gonna notice. I mean, I'll notice it, but yeah, that's kind of dumb. So yeah, I mean, if you moved it here, it would work, but I mean, really you just need flatter screws, which would make more sense. If I moved it over here, you'd have to go 2 spaces over. So again, to be able to move that back, I mean, it's gonna be touching right on that piece, and I don't think you should do that. So I'm just gonna leave it how it is. So now here comes the part that I think I've been dreading the most, getting this guy on here. So once we take that off, that goo, oh, I need to do that. I did fingerprint that guy, so I am gonna wipe him very gently. Use a little alcohol wipe. All right, so in here we have a lot of cords. So we have this big old bundle here, all these fans and this SATA looking guy, and then we have the USB friend. This is gonna be a nightmare to cable manage. Oh, that's got enough room. We can probably go out the back. I do like this USB-C, that's pretty nice. So we'll go ahead and plug that in. I don't know, I should be able to get to that. That one I think I can probably get to fairly easily. I've already forgot how I figured it out a minute ago. Oh, wait a second, that's on the bottom. What the hell's well? So to screw that down, I think I have to use these, right? All right, so we got that plugged in. And now let's plug in our USB-C. And then basically we're gonna peel this off and slap it on there, I guess. We got one sort of on. This guy can just come off and come back on, that's fine. But yeah, there's no way you can get another stick of RAM in there, so it's just gonna be 2 sticks of RAM. If I go down, these cords still would hit it, so my cable management pride is gonna fall apart pretty soon, I think. So these smaller cables are the fans connected on the bottom of the radiator. Same with these. All right, and this big honking mess is a bunch of fan stuff. And the USB is gonna be a problem. It's not gonna reach anywhere. So you definitely need a USB header. Either way, I'm gonna use a splitter because it'll make it cleaner. So that USB is plugged into here. Oh, so there's a SATA cable power supply here. So I can plug my 3 fans back here into this one. Oh, that's the fan headers are so small, I see. So let's push that back through there. Yeah, so this is plugged into CPU fan 1. So the guy on the left here is CPU fan 1. All right, so it's a little easier than I thought it was gonna be. All right, so I was working on my Razer desktop build here and I didn't have enough USB headers. So I got this USB splitter. So on my board, this is the ASRock Z690 Taichi Razer edition. So there's a USB header here, which has the standard 9-pin, a USB 2.0, of course, header. So the standard 9-pin is here, and then we have a, right here, 4-pin. This adapter is a 9-pin. I could plug it just into the 4-pin, but I want to plug it into the 9-pin, of course, so we can get the 2 separate ones, because even the 9-pin really is just 2 separate USBs, and then that would be splitting it into these 4-pack here, which should give me what I need, right? So yeah, there's only 3 USB 2.0 headers on my board. So right here, we'll unplug this guy, hang that out. And then for this feller, right, it's just 2 here and 2 here. And these only fit one way really, so I don't know why it's not plugged in already. You know, this just plugs right in, and then you can plug the same one in here. This will, I believe, snap apart as 2 separate pieces, but I'm gonna hide it down in this mess, so I don't need to separate it.
Wrong!
So I'm just gonna fish, you know, this back here where the original cord was, take that out, and then we're just gonna fish it right up in here. Of course, in the bottom is the little flat spot, the dummy piece, and then that should plug in right there. All right, so we got that on. So as you can tell, I got a lot of mess here, right? So
I got a lot going on.
Here's a USB port. This goes from the case itself for the LED lights on the bottom. So you can have Razer Synapse. You know, these are the standard 9-pin ports there, right? So we're just gonna plug these USBs into that flat part down the bottom. So we got that one in, and then I should have another one here that I was just messing with, and we're gonna plug that on the far side, I guess. I may actually need to separate these, right? Because, see, I don't have enough room for this one over here, so I kind of need a little more space with this guy, so it's gonna work out better. I thought I was gonna keep them together for the neatness, but I'm not.
You gotta keep them separated.
I'm just gonna separate them. That way I can tuck one in over here, and then this guy may be a little more over here, depending on how I have my wires ran at the end here. Obviously, I'm not done cable managing, right? And then I'll show you at the end that this works just fine. So, looks pretty good to me.
Wrong!
I mean, that would look good. I mean, I wish they were black because the rest of the case is black, but I'm gonna hide them down here so you won't even see them. So, all right. So now I had to take a break the other day because I didn't have enough USB connections. So I ordered the splitter. We basically got about 4 things left. We have the fan controller, the aRGB, and of course the power supply. And if you're following along with Linus's video, he would say hook up the PWM first, but I think I'm gonna do the power supply first just because that'll give me a better idea of how I'm gonna cable manage some of these things, because I think I can move the PWM other places. So I'm gonna put them over here to remind me, but we'll just get the power supply up. Also, based on Lance's video, he is saying the best implementation should be the air going up. The bottom is flat, so I mean the air has to go this way, I would assume. And the fan here, the label's not there, so the air goes towards the Razer label. I think this is just a standard 140 fan. If you look in there closely, you don't see the snake. It's hard to tell probably on camera, but trust me, you don't see the snake like you would on the regular fans. So I'm led to believe the air will shoot upwards, which is what I want. All right, so let's just determine how this is gonna work. All right, so it's not gonna fit in this way, of course. I will have to put the battery. Oh, there are some pads in there. That's pretty nice. There are like little rubber pads in here for this guy to sit on, and a little space, and there's air down there, of course. So, and the Razer, of course, has lights up here, so you'd have to have this part going up. So I would assume that's where the air will be coming from. All right, so we want to get these cords out of the way. Let me just see how easy it is to get this in and out of here. Oh yeah, it fits in just fine. Just put that there and screw. Oh, that's not the right way. I'm stupid.
Is you dumb?
This way, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah, and it just juts up there. So yeah, it's kind of built perfectly for this case. The screw holes are right there to mount everything just fine. Since I have plenty of room to work with getting it in and out of here, I'm gonna hook up the cables on the outside. Let me double check Lance's video on what he said to hook up first. He says to hook up the CPU cables first. So these are two going to my CPU. So there's two 8-pin on the board. So each of these 8-pin cables should carry about 150 watts. My processor starts at 125, goes to 253. So I need to have both cables plugged in case it gets high performance. And I don't think it hurts anything to have them plugged in. There is labeling here. It's motherboard, PCIe CPU, and they both look essentially the same, so I'm gonna assume it doesn't matter which one I use here. Now it does say PCIe on this side, so I'll maybe use CPU here. So, yeah, and this is gonna be a little tighter. And so this fat clip should have gone onto the motherboard, and the small clip goes back in here, and I had that plugged in the wrong way. Yeah, that's weird. Both of these say CPU, big fat clip, small clip, fat clip, small clip, also small clip. So let me plug in the fat clip side. All right, so this one's plugged in, fat side in, skinny side out. Both of these are skinny, so we're gonna plug skinny side in. Both of those are fully in. All right, so we got that finally. Let's get all these dumb things back out here again. All right, so 20 minutes later, we've now fixed what was originally just plugging wires in, just a dumb mistake. Now, let's get back to where we were originally 20 minutes ago. We have our two CPU ports. We're gonna plug in back here. So we got those two plugged in. Maybe a tight fit. Did I make a mistake? All right, so this time I ran the power cables for the CPU through this hole, which is what I probably should have done in the first place. All right, so after yet another rearrangement of the power cables in the cooler, now I have the power cables going down this way, and I feel like that is gonna work. So let's just give it a shot. Doesn't work now, I'm just gonna throw the whole thing in the trash can. Yeah, that fits a lot better than the previous one did. It's definitely gonna be a mess back here though. I thought I was gonna be able to cable manage well. I still think I could, it's just these cables need to be longer. You could put them through here and come straight down. It'd be nice and pretty, but it's not long enough for that.
Oh, no.
All right, so now it's time for the 24-pin connector for the motherboard. Should be easily found in my box of messy wires. There it is right there. And then we have our little bag of screws. I'll put these screws over here. Well, I'm definitely gonna lose them. So now let's go with the motherboard one first. It's this big chunker. So this big piece connects to the motherboard. I'm just gonna slide that through this big hole here. For now, let's go ahead and slide you in. I don't know if you can see, right? So this guy right here. All right, so we get you down here. And this should go motherboard. Of course, there's two spots right here. So we plug this guy in. All right, so let's do the fan controller. Probably should have done that earlier, but I wanted to see how the battery PSU was gonna hook up, not the battery. So this is a SATA. That will just go the power cord there into this guy. And we have a SATA power cable here. It only goes in one way, right? There's like a little L shape there and a little L shape here. Plug that in. And then this guy, of course, just plugs into the SATA peripheral port here. And let's do that one on the bottom, so we'll have plenty of room. So also on the PWM, you have this USB. I'm gonna plug it in here so I don't get confused about which cord goes where. All right, and then on our RGB, it is Molex. So we plug in the Molex and also USB. So we'll plug this USB in as well. Micro USB, which seems dumb, but so be it. All right, and then here is our Molex cable. Same shenanigans. Just a bunch of big mess here. It also only goes one way. All right, so we got them in there. And then of course we just plug this into one of our other ports here for. So now we got quite the mess going on here. Razer documentation as usual is very unhelpful. So I don't know what these two cords are. I mean, this one is clearly the ARG controller. I don't know what this little 3-piece is. I'm just gonna hope it is just if you have a different ARG maybe, I don't know. So I'm gonna plug it in, the aRGB in here. Now I just need to plug in the PCIe cords. So I will be using the 3080 Ti. You can tell it has 2 different 4 pins. Let me see if one's longer than the other. There's 3 cables. Let me see if there's any difference in sizes. They all appear to be the same size. And we'll plug in this end to the PSU. Let me slide this guy in here. All right, look at that. That is a mounted PSU. So the motherboard came with this little bracket, and in the manual it says it's to help support the GPU. And then you put this on here. So I mean, I assume it's like a little holder, but I have no idea where it would go. And the manual doesn't really describe it very well, so I'm just not gonna use it. I'm just gonna assume, I'm just gonna buy a mount to help support it. Right here is my GPU, which is the ZOTAC 3080 Ti. Of course, we need 2 slots here.
There's so many slots you won't know where to begin. Whoa.
So let me remove 2 right here. The screw thing here, but you kind of need like a classic screwdriver to do that, as opposed to, you know, what you're more likely to be working on a computer with. All right. So there are 3 PCIe slots. I think in general, you should assume that top one is the best one, but I did look in the manual and confirm that is the one that should be used for this GPU. And I'm having a hard time with this water. All right, so there we are. Clamped in. Let me get our screws in. So we're all the way in. I guess I would put like something here to hold it. Really doesn't seem too bad right now. All right, and now we gotta get our PCIe cord plugged in here. So it is ugly, but it is connected. Got the GPU in. I of course, had to run 2 separate PCIe cords. Only ran first. They had these weird pigtail things. The GPU came with these adapters, but they're very ugly. So I don't know what's less ugly. I'm essentially done other than plugging in this train wreck back here. So let's just start with the fans. So I have 3 fans in the front and essentially 3 fans in the back. So that's the aRGB, right? So aRGB, 3 in the front. So we're gonna go top to bottom. So we have the top aRGB, and now we have the top fan. So the top fan controller, we're gonna put it into, I guess, number 1. And then aRGB is also on number 1. I'll probably have to rearrange this, but for now, we'll just do them one at a time. All right, so on the second guy, in the front, we'll go into fan slot number 2. And in the bottom, we'll go into fan slot number 3. All right, this huge train wreck seems like it is connected. So let's give her a shot, see what happens. All right, so now I have everything I think connected. Display port plugged in. I'm just gonna plug the power in and we'll see what happens. Could explode, could work, could just do nothing. I honestly have no idea. All right, let's plug her in first. Didn't see any sparks flying. So let's press the power button and see what happens. Nothing. All right, there we go, we got some lights. Now we got lights. Look at that. Yeah, I haven't installed Windows, so I don't expect it to actually work. Yeah, these fans here are working. All right, so let me power them back down. All right, we had a scary moment there, but I had to flash the BIOS. So the motherboard is older than the CPU, so it didn't recognize it first. I had to flash the BIOS with an update, and now we got to this screen just fine. And let me plug this guy in. Yeah, now the keyboard lights up. So let's go ahead, and this is my Windows drive. So we're gonna plug this in here, and then we will F2 to run our setup. Oh, there we go. There's our motherboard settings. Very nice. I haven't even installed Windows yet. Let's go on through the display port. So here you can see various settings. So now I want to get out this. Let me get a mouse that can be wired, I guess. Let me try to turn it off again. Turn it back on. Recognize the boot drive. All right, so we see ASRock. Okay, so it does recognize this UV. All right, F11 for boot menus. We'll give it a second and see if it recognizes it automatically. Now we'll hit F11. Looks like we're doing something. There we go. Perfect. And it recognizes my mouse too. Installing now. There we go. So let me walk through this. So here we are with my desktop fully built. What you just watched was filmed over 6 months ago. I have used this desktop every day since, and I've had pretty much no problems. Not only that, as you can see, I am running almost a 100% Razer setup. If you enjoyed this, subscribe and come back. I will have plenty of more videos on this desktop and all the products you see here. This video was just the build, but I will dig a little bit deeper in future videos and show what happens after the build and show a little bit of cable management, run some benchmarks, and I might bump up my GPU to a 40 series. And if I'm really brave, I'll make some videos on why Synapse doesn't suck.
And look like an idiot on YouTube.
And how some of the Razer software, like Axum, is pretty cool. All right, that's it. Thanks for checking me out. Subscribe to 512, subscribe to Stuff Mike Bot, and don't ever subscribe to MASH IT.